Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to A Soldier Speaks English, and I'm your host Adil Raja, and I am present here today once again with Tia Mullis, and this is our program format, which we have named Geopolitics East and West. And in the last episode, we have talked about the impending attack on Iran by the U.S. and the recent development, as we've noted, the more down, the U.S. and Israel have attacked Iran, and in the Middle East there is a war going on, not only in Iran, but these are three countries whose borders are combined together: Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. All three of these countries are at war right now. The entire region of Middle East is at war right now. There is a serious risk of escalation of that war. Iran has already responded to this war. Obviously, there are targets like the US Israel Iran escalation deals with the direct and strikes on Iranian linked strategic targets. Iranian retaliation is targeting the US regional bases. Rising risk of maritime disruption in the Gulf is already there, and strategic messaging from both sides suggest calibrated escalation rather than accidental conflict so far. And then once you do talk about the Pakistan Afghanistan military escalation, then there are cross border strikes, and there are retaliatory claims. Civilian casualty allegations from Kabul are there, and they are holding. Then there are Pakistani military casualties which have been reported. There's growing hostility between the Afghan Taliban and the Pakistani state. While these appear as a separate crisis, they may be, in fact, components of a broader geopolitical restructuring. And I will be commenting upon that. But before we do that, we will go to Theo A. Mullis, and we will get his take on the US and the Israeli invasion of Iran. What is your insight into this attack, and where do you think this conflict is headed, Theo?
So, as has been building up for some time, and I do have to eat my hat a little bit here, as in one of our earlier episodes, I dismissed another US-Israeli attack on Iran, and I have to straight up, I was very wrong about that. Now, this has been building up for some time. We've seen American forces build up in the area, and what really was the clue for me was the dinner served for American servicemen and women but a few days ago. And in the United States military, there is a bit of a tradition that if you receive steak and shrimp, I think it is, surf and turf, for dinner, then you're going to war. And that was what was served up. So as soon as I saw that, I said, yeah, the attack is forthcoming. And last night I had from a source that the attack would be imminent, and wake up to see the Americans are calling it Operation Epic Fury, which sounds straight out of Donald Trump's office. The Israelis are calling it Lion's Roar. And it is, at the moment, we're not talking about boots on the ground that we are aware of beyond the usuals, some Mossad, CIA, etc. This is a series of airstrikes and then Iranian retaliation. And it appears that unlike the 12-day war last year, where American and Israeli attacks were very focused on purely Iranian military targets and the nuclear facilities, these attacks have struck at the heart of Iranian leadership. And it's been reported, this is of course very unverified, and this is from Israeli media, Channel 12, they're reporting that the Supreme Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the first wave. But as I've said, this is...
Yeah, but the counter argument from Iranian media is that these are false reports. He had already been moved from his house and his office. Yes. He wasn't there. Yeah.
Yes, that could well be the case, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was. This is a very fluid situation. Iran is a very difficult country for information to exit. And of course, there's a war on. So misinformation, disinformation is going to be flying around just as fast as the bullets and bombs are. What we do know is that these strikes have hit the presidential palace. They have hit government buildings. At least one senior Iranian leader, Ali Shamkhani, the Secretary of Defense Council, has been confirmed to have been killed. And Iranian attacks, or retaliatory attacks, have been launched towards Israel, have been launched towards American bases in Bahrain. There's a video circulating online, currently unverified, but it shows what is alleged to be, yes, I don't know if that is it. That is one of them. Yes, that's one of them.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay, okay.
So that's alleged to be a ballistic missile strike. There's another one which I sent you just prior to this stream, Adil, involving a Shaheed, which is definitely a Shaheed drone. I know what those things look like.
All right, but there is a community note on the X on this video. It says that, and it still requires rating, that the fake video has duplicate picture frames, physics don't add up. But we've got confirmed reports, multiple reports, that the Iranians have hit all the US bases in the United Arab Emirates, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia. And of course, they're also targeting the Israeli cities as well.
Yes, they are. And I can only expect this to continue. Now, as for bear in mind as well, it was only 2 days ago that we had diplomats walking out of nuclear negotiations saying progress has been made. And it seems to me that this is, if I were to be quite cynical, about this, and I've been reading an article by Professor Tim Snyder. That's the images coming from Tehran, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh no, that actually, I am wrong. That's the image of the Shaheed allegedly hitting a US base in Bahrain.
Yeah. That's and you confirm you've seen Shaheed drones, and we were discussing in our last program. We were discussing about Shaheed drones, if you remember, to you. And I asked you the dynamics, and I said that how they are going to impact this entire taser. And here it is. There you go.
مسيرة يا شباب.
Yeah.
مسيرة اضرب.
The Shaheed drone is coming down, as you can see.
And then it begins its terminal phase, and you can see it dive.
That's what it is. That's what it is. No doubt about it.
That's a Shaheed. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So the Popular Front has shared this video, and it's saying the Iran and Bahrain footage showing a Shaheed 136 drone striking a U.S. naval base in Bahrain. And this is the credit goes to them for sharing this video of yours. And it does not have any community notes. Normally, any video as such, which is doubtful, there are community notes on X, so there are no notes there. Yeah, please carry on, Theo.
So as for the motivations behind this, and I'm going to focus on Trump, I think the Israeli motivations are fairly clear. I want to bring your attention to a 1997 satirical comedy film starring Robert De Niro called Wag the Dog.
Wag the Dog. A journalist favorite. Yeah, Wag the Dog. Yeah. So you're linking it with the Epstein file, it means, You want to say that,
with the Epstein files, and I'm linking it not just with the Epstein files, but with upcoming midterm elections. So for those who don't know, this film, Wag the Dog, centers around a spin doctor and a Hollywood producer who fabricate a war in Albania in the film to distract voters from a presidential sex scandal.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is one of the key motivations for President Trump. You have the midterms coming up in November. He's doing terribly in the polls. But also, on a much more sinister bent, we have the potential for special legislation trying to come in and affect how the polls are run in the United States. This is how authoritarian regimes, especially, which is what Trump wants to be, secure power. They go to war and they attempt to shore up public support through short and victorious wars. Now, I would be a very happy man were the Iranian regime to fall tomorrow. However, I do not believe that this is the right way to do it. I think that is the right and obligation of the Iranian people, if they want to do that, to overthrow this regime. And I think significant numbers do, as has been seen over repeated protests in the last decade and very recently as well, in which thousands were murdered by the regime. This is a despotic, tyrannical regime. However, these attacks, which absolutely are against international law, and there's a reason that my country, the United Kingdom, did not allow our bases in Diego Garcia and in the UK itself to be used, because, and it was a bit of a wishy-washy statement from our government, but it said under our interpretation of international law, we could not allow this to happen. And we've seen a variety of different responses from across sort of the West, the rest of the West. Sorry, that was a bit difficult on my tongue. But Europe especially, we've seen a bit of a focus towards international law. We've seen support from Canada. We've seen support from Australia, and this is, for actions against Iran. But I don't think that any motivations to spread democracy or help the Iranian people are what's behind Trump's decision to do this. I think this is purely an attempt to distract from his very significant political troubles at home and shore up his government. And if I were to go very sinister, and this is something that Professor Tim Snyder, who I encourage all listeners, readers, and watchers to investigate and read, is also very worried about. And he is an expert on democracy and an expert on tyranny.
All right, Theo. Fair enough. I would. I respect your point of view, and I believe what you're saying does make a lot of sense. You've given the wag the dog scenario regarding the Epstein files, linking it the requirements of President Trump to wage this war because he wants the focus to shift from this mega scandal. Well, I've got a different opinion. I do agree partially because that is one of the bird, which he wants to kill with the stone over here, President Trump. But in fact, he is killing two birds with this one stone. Please try to understand this. This entire theater, there's a war going on in Pakistan, Iran, and then Afghanistan as well. The headache region for the U.S. might and the U.S. empire. It has been
the graveyard of empires. Afghanistan,
graveyard of empire. The U.S. have spent 2 decades, thousands of lives lost, limbs lost, $2 trillion lost. They could not conquer Afghanistan. So what's going on? They have successfully created instability in the region, but there are 5 pillars, I believe, to this instability. The first pillar is neutralizing the Sino-Russian maritime corridor. Ever since the USSR's dream was to reach the warm waters, that's why they invaded Afghanistan and they wanted to come to the port of Karachi to reach the Arabian Sea. But the Afghan Jihad started, the CIA-ISI partnership started from there. And that is the origin of the present day crisis, and that is the origin of Taliban. You know that, right? So now, under the current circumstances, I'm not going to go into the history, but the first pillar is neutralizing the Sino-Russian maritime corridor, because the Russians could not reach the USSR, the Soviet Empire could not reach the warm waters. But the Pakistanis themselves, through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, invited the Chinese to the warm waters, and Chinese are Russian partners. So Sino-Russian maritime corridor to the warm waters have to be stopped or to be made very expensive to do business in this corridor. It is very simple. Trade corridors bypassing the Western controlled choke points. Well, they don't want that, right? And then the military projection capability in the Indian Ocean through these corridors. Well, that is huge. Destabilizing Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan effectively blocks operationalization of Gwadar, the deep sea port, the expansion of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and the Euro-Asian access to the warm waters gets blocked. that this constrains the multipolar expansion which is going on right now. That's the first pillar. The second pillar, I believe, is the Balkanization of Balochistan, very important province. Half of the province has got vast mineral resources. The Chinese are extracting it. It's got a strategic coastline, as you can see in the Arabian Sea in the Arabian Sea. There's the big coastline. The port of Gwadar is there. All right. Then it has got energy transit routes. All right. Now, the Balochistan is it's part of Balochistan is in Iran and part of it is in Pakistan. Now, an independent and fragmented Baloch region would sever Pakistan's territorial continuity with the Chinese, all right, disrupt Iranian strategic depth, all right, provide external powers leverage over critical resources and create a permanent pressure zone. This is classic geopolitical fragmentation model. All right. Then the third pillar, I've given the two pillar. The third pillar is Afghanistan as a proxy containment trap. Rather than direct Western military intervention, the preferred strategy appears to be sustained friction over here between the Afghan Taliban and Pakistan. Then resources exhaustion of Islamabad, definitely it is going on right now. Then internal instability preventing regional projection, which is the Pakistanis' forte. They sell their geopolitical position. And the Pakistanis are not in this war with their own army because of their crackdown on dissent, but this is actually the international game plan. Then there is a prolonged Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict. If it goes on, it is going to definitely effectively impact on it will be militarily distracting. All right, economically it will strain Pakistan, and diplomatically Pakistan will become dependent on the regional power, which is India, by the way. Okay. Then the fourth pillar is the China-Pakistan economic corridor vulnerability. China-Pakistan economic corridor, if you look at the map, is linked with Pakistan, and China is linked with the disputed region of Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, if the northern route of China-Pakistan economic corridor, which passes through Gilgit-Baltistan, if any escalation happens in Kashmir, because Indians are already preparing for Sindoor 2 operation, or northern territories or cross-border tensions, they exist. And ever since Sergio Gore has gone to as the ambassador to the India and as a special representative of South Asia, this game plan has already come into effect. The Prime Minister Modi of India has visited Israel as well, unprecedented visit. So now this, if any escalation is to happen through Sindoor 2 in Kashmir or the northern areas or in Gilgit-Baltistan region, now that would physically sever the China-Pakistan bridge first. Second, it will undermine the economic viability of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. If the cost of doing business increases too much, Chinese, if it's not a business-friendly model, why would any international investor go there? And then it would weaken Beijing's regional foothold in the region. Infrastructure corridors are now geopolitical fault lines, Theo. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So the fifth and the final thing is the fifth and the final pillar of this instability is the restoration of unipolar leverage. The broader strategic objective may be the containment of multipolar blocks such as BRICS, all right? The destabilization of Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran axis altogether, it prevents regional consolidation. Chinese are investing $60 billion in Pakistan and $60 billion, which is just the beginning initial investment in Iran. And they're investing heavily in Afghanistan as well. So if they disrupt the entire region, it actually blocks alternative financial and energy alignments and reinforces Western strategic primacy. Fragmented regions are easier to influence than cohesive alliances as they exist right now. So, the key out of this, the entire discussion, I believe, is that this is not simply about isolated strikes or wag the dog scenario. This is part of a broader picture. What we are witnessing may be the gradual re-engineering of South Asia's geopolitical architecture, where trade routes and territorial integrity are all being recalibrated in the contest between multipolar expansion and unipolar preservation. That's what I have to say. Your comments on this would be interesting. It would be interesting to get a feedback from you, Theo, please.
I think you're certainly correct in that 2026 and Trump's administration has seen a complete restructuring of the global order. However, there's a couple of points I want to make. Now, I am not an expert in a number of the issues or areas, geopolitically that you have brought up, but one of the things that you mentioned was access via Pakistan and China for Russia to reach warm water ports. Well, Russia could gain that access through a better relationship with China anyway. And you have to bear in mind that the relationships especially between Russia and China, this isn't an alliance. This is quid pro quo. You do something for me, I do it for you, which is why China is perfectly happy to dictate oil prices to Russia at the moment. There are a number of things which I think you are correct on, and I think both of us are correct in some way. I think this is a mix of factors, but I think that under Trump's United States, a lot of this very high-level geostrategic thinking is not what is going through this man's head. Perhaps the people around him, yes, but this is the chap making the final decision. And he does not have that kind of mind. He has a much more short-term mind. Now, people like Hegseth, if they really wanted to reintroduce the unipolar world and to strengthen what they would see as the United States' place in the world, then they wouldn't have carried out the kind of policies that they have been, especially with regards to allies in Europe, allies in Southeast Asia. And what we've seen is a huge strategic mistake on the United States' part, if that was their goal in pushing Europe away. I mean, especially when it comes to their military industrial complex, we've seen Europe's begin to rise again, and the United States is now beginning to complain that the Europeans are no longer buying their weapons. So I think that you are right in a number of ways, that they do want to destabilize Iran. They do want to destabilize China. They do want to take an ally of, well, not an ally, but a partner of Russia and China off the table. I think that's absolutely correct. And I think they would be okay to see Pakistan and Afghanistan struggle in a long-term conflict. Because they certainly, I mean, Trump doesn't want anything flaring up with India again, although you've said that they're looking to do that anyway. And anything that could distract and take energy from China, from Russia, etc., is going to be something that they do. And I think that is perhaps the more realpolitik, the more sort of old school Cold War warriors who may still be in positions in the United States who may be pushing this for those motivations. But as for the motivations of Mr. Trump himself, I don't think that they're as nuanced or as well thought out as that. I think they are more in the wag of the dog scenario. But I think there's truth to be found in both of these perspectives, which is why we have this program.
Thank you. Theo. That is why geopolitics, East and West, the mix is unbeatable, and that's why, ladies and gentlemen, please let us know. Do you want us to continue this? And because it's a developing story, do you want us to keep on doing? Otherwise, we do our weekly programs. But if you want, we can do it more frequently, depending upon Theo's availability. Today, Theo was available, and we wanted to do this program. So let us know if you want us to keep you posted about the entire scenario, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you, Adil.